Hi everyone, it's Gene Calderon here with Gene Calderon Apologetics Ministries, and today we're coming to you with the beginning of a special series of teachings that we'll be doing in order to celebrate the feast that is known as Pentecost, or Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks, or the Feast of the Harvest. Many different times we read about this feast happening in the Bible, and many times as Christians we're just not familiar with those feasts or why they're celebrated, what they're celebrating, things of that sort. Now, Pentecost is a little bit different because there are denominations of churches that are celebrating more of Pentecost or being Pentecostal because of the events that happened on a particular year, the year of Jesus' death and resurrection, where the Holy Spirit comes to the temple and it baptizes the disciples and the apostles and many others during that time that we read about in the book of Acts. But many people fail to realize that Pentecost had been celebrated for at least 1,400 years before that particular day. So this was nothing new. This isn't one special day that they were celebrating. This was going on and on and on for many, many years. And it had a serious significance to it when it came to the Jewish people. And so I want to share a little bit about that as we're coming up to celebrate Pentecost this Sunday. So 3 times a year, God had commanded the people to appear before him in the place that he chose. Now, the Jewish people had determined that that place, the place where God's presence was going to be in the temple in Jerusalem, where God's presence was understood to be in between the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies of the temple. You see, at Passover, at Shavuot, and at the Feast of Tabernacles, the Jewish people from around the world, wherever it is that they had scattered at that point, were supposed to come back. Those who were faithful to Yahweh were supposed to come back to the holy city, make a pilgrimage, make a trip, make preparations to go back to Jerusalem in order to celebrate those 3 feasts: Passover, Pentecost, and Feast of Tabernacles. And so this was a very important festival, celebration for the Jewish people, for them to make those plans to make that journey. And it would have been a very joyous occasion, not a burden, not something that they would have nagged about or complained about. It was something they would look forward to. So you see this huge crowd coming to Jerusalem, very joyous, speaking different languages because of the countries of which they were coming from, crowding into the city, singing and celebrating and making arrangements for all of their religious obligations and finding places for their families to be able to stay for the next few days. Even the modern celebrations that we have today, like Christmas and Easter, those would have paled in comparison compared to what these people would have been celebrating. The whole meaning and the ceremony was really deeply rooted into their past, and it was also giving them hope for the future. So it doesn't seem like an accident that these particular feast days would have been the time that God would have selected in order to do his redemptive acts through Jesus Christ, the Messiah who was to come. So on the festival of Shavuot, of weeks, of Pentecost, he revealed his presence in a whole new way on that particular year. And that's probably why we know it so much, so well as Christians, and maybe not so much the other festivals. So let's talk about the name of the festival. This feast had several different designations, as I've already given you hints in the Bible, okay? The Hebrew name for it is Shavuot, which means weeks, the Feast of Weeks. And when we look at this festival, it happens in the 3rd month of their religious year, the month of Sivan. And the Greek-speaking Jews would refer to this feast as Pentecost. Now, Penta meaning 50 days. We read about this in the book of Acts, chapter 2. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. And this name of Pentecost was based on God's command that a special offering of new grain would be made on the 50th day after the Passover Sabbath. In Leviticus chapter 23, we read this: "From the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, count off 7 full weeks. Count off 50 days up to the day after the 7th Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord." And so the people would have been bringing gifts to the temple and presenting them as offerings to the priests. And they had special sacrifices that were made on the 50th day of the Passover. And these included 7 male lambs, a young bull, 2 rams, all as burnt offerings. There's a lot going on. How many times have we read about that or thought about that when we're celebrating Pentecost? All of these sacrifices that were being made. So even the best thank offerings required even a sin offering, some kind of atonement, a fellowship offering to make a renewed relationship with God. And these were all symbolic. Their meanings came from the background of the events of Pentecost on which God would send his Holy Spirit. Following all of these ceremonies and offerings, the Jewish people spent the whole afternoon and even into the evening celebrating with a great festive meal, to which they would even invite the poor in to come and partake with them. Even if they didn't have the means to be able to give the offerings, they were invited to come and enjoy in the celebration. So this was, again, both to rejoice and to keep God's command in order to provide for the poor. Since being truly thankful to God or having thanksgiving to God was demonstrated by being generous and having a generous spirit, God commanded the Israelites in Leviticus chapter 23, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and the alien. These special ceremonies, they took place after the normal morning sacrifice and the worship service that happened in the temple, which usually began at dawn and ended by sometime in the mid-morning. As the offerings were presented and the sacrifices were being made, portions of the Bible would have been read. And according to Jewish history, those portions were portions like in Exodus chapter 19 and 20, the story of God presenting the Torah, including the 10 Commandments, and Moses climbing up onto Mount Sinai. And also in Ezekiel chapters 1 and 2 would have been read to the public. Ezekiel's vision of God appearing in fire and in wind. And God had met the Israelites on the mountain of God, which we read about in Exodus chapter 24. Then Moses set out with Joshua, his aide, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in the dispute can go to them." And so it was on Shavuot where God met them on the Temple Mount, the mountain of the Lord, which we read about in the book of Isaiah. In chapter 2, verse 3, we read, "Many peoples will come and say, 'Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.'" And so all of this was very well known in the Jewish community, to be able to come to the mountain of the Lord, to be able to celebrate Pentecost, this grain harvest, 50 days after the Passover. This was nothing new to them. This is something that had been going on for at least 1400 years. And so when we read about this and we look at all this, what is the significance for us? Why should we make any deal about it at all if we're going to look at Pentecost? So before Jesus' birth, there was a new emphasis that was added to the harvest festival of Shavuot. And so we're going to look into that as we continue on in our teachings about this and kind of really see where this ties in with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and what we understand today as the church of the Messianic era. So thank you so much for watching. God bless you. Again, Gene Calderon with Gene Calderon Apologetics Ministries. I am the chapter director for Ratio Christi at Purdue University Northwest, also serving at Freedom Church. I am a missionary to the university. So if anyone's looking for a local missionary to support, that's what I am. The links are below if you'd like to consider looking into the ministry that we partake in with Ratio Christi. Again, reaching students and really trying to share them why we believe what we believe and to be able to share that winsomely with others. So thanks for watching, and join us again tomorrow. We'll come back with some more of this understanding of Pentecost, Shavuot, the Festival of Weeks. God bless you. Thanks again.